Time for the Severe MMA Preview Show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
That is right. It's me, Ian O'Neill, and we're back for another UFC preview show, and we've got a big one this week. UFC London this Saturday, second early card in a row. The lads over a bit there in Ireland and in England, they don't know what's going on with these early cards, but we're delighted for it too. We have some violence for breakfast over where me and Spencer are in Canada as well. Before we get into the card, I want to remind everybody about our sponsors. That's All Real Nutrition. Head on over to All Real Nutrition, eatallreal.com, enter the code word severe MMA, get you some protein bars, get you some peanut butter spread, glasses. They have everything over there. Head on over to the lads and grab some bars there. Right, let's get into this card. No fucking intros, no soliloquies, no nothing for this. We don't have time because this card is packed to the rafters with talent. A host of European talent on show, a host of former Cage Warriors champions and Cage Warriors competitors are competing on this card in the O2 on Saturday night. Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes as the main event. Paddy Pimblett, Molly McCann, Paul Craig, Joy Herbert, Nathaniel Wood. Lots of people, lots of stories, lots of talking points. Let's get into it. The main event, Tom Aspinall passed his last main event in the O2 with Volkov with flying colors. Relatively easy fight. Secured a straight arm lock. Business as usual for Tom Aspinall. This time around, not so simple, I don't think. A very, very, very tough test in Curtis Blaydes. A really strong grappler, really strong wrestler, will almost certainly, in my opinion, look to take this fight down. I'm going to go to Sean Sheehan first. Just give me your thoughts on the main event, its status as a main event, and maybe a little bit about the fight itself, Sean.
Like, I think for Tom Aspinall, we've talked about him on previous preview shows and on the Severe MMA podcast and other places, and I think his rise has been almost too quick over the last year or so. You know, the Arlovsky fight, I remember saying at the time, like, oh, 2 fights into the UFC against Jake Collier and Alan Badeau after being kind of in the big fights, kind of rushed into big fights in Cage Warriors before that. Well, not necessarily in Cage Warriors, but Andrei Arlovsky in your third fight, he came through that, with flying colors, finished him. Sergey Spivak, another tough fight, but a good move at that time. Volkov, a very tough fight, a big, tall guy, came through that as well and finished him. And I just feel like Blaydes is another very tough fight. That's maybe another little bit too quickly. But I've said that for the last, maybe 2 out of 3 fights anyway. And he has proven me wrong. But I'm going to say it again. I just think, I was actually talking to someone today, right? And if you look at the top of that division, there is the Francis Ngannou fight. There is Cyril Gagne. There's Derek Lewis and obviously John Jones and these lads are talking about here. And it felt like everyone in the area just outside of the title picture was looking for Tai Tuivasa, right? Because they all want the striker who, if you get into a striking match with him, you can win at times, and you can probably take him down as well. Like, I'm sure Aspinall might be looking to take him down and submit him and stuff like that. The one you want to avoid is probably Curtis Blaydes in that situation if you are the striker. If you're Gagne, you don't want to fight Curtis Blaydes because we saw what happened the last time with Ngannou, took him down and beat him like that. Okay, different for Ngannou and all. But if you're Tom Aspinall, who's still young in his career, still up and coming, you're getting probably the toughest matchup with the least upside in terms of, like, you're not probably moving much forward with a win here, and you're getting a very, very tough fight. Like, if you look at it from Curtis Blaydes' point of view, and I know Harry will probably have a good breakdown of this and the lads as well in terms of the tactical point of view, Curtis Blaydes knows now that everyone is looking for that big shot on the way in, right? That's how you beat Curtis Blaydes. You wait for him to go in with his hands out and his chin up, and then you punch him with an uppercut and knock him out, right? That's as simplistic as we could make it for anyone here who's never watched mixed martial arts before. So that's grand from the other point of view of the person fighting him. But from Curtis Blaydes' point of view, you'll look at that and saying, right, I can't do that. If I avoid that, I can be favored against most of these strikers in this division. Now, we know Aspinall is a very good BJJ. He's not just a striker, and I'm not saying he is. But if Blaydes can avoid getting knocked out on the way down, and he can still add in the takedowns, whether it's against the cage or with double legs in the middle of the cage or wherever it might be, jumping underneath a jab and body lock and taking guys down, he's a terrible matchup for all of those guys. And I think he's a terrible matchup for Tom Aspinall as well. And I think, last thing I will say on this before I throw it over to you, I think the BJJ of Tom Aspinall is not going to be a factor in this. Now, that's famous last words. He'd probably win by submission. And now, okay, if it turns into a defensive fight for Tom Aspinall, if he gets on top, absolutely, he's BJJ. And if he takes his back, no problem. But if he's taken down and he's on his back, I don't think it's going to play a massive factor here. And I think Curtis Blaydes is going to dominate this fight. Curtis Blaydes is the underdog. It's a very close fight on the betting, but I think it's a really, really tough fight for Tom Aspinall. He's going to have to prove a lot of things here. He's going to have to prove that he can beat a wrestler like he's never fought before. He's able to land his strikes against that guy. He's able to catch him in the place he needs to catch him, and he's able to not get taken down by someone that good at takedowns. Very, very tough. And I think that's the integer in which this fight is decided. And if he can do that, if he can win the fight, to the moon with Tom Aspinall. There's no more holding him back. You'll never hear me saying it again, that Aspinall needs to be slowed down, needs to slow the roll. Put him right in there at the very, very top.
To the moon or to Mars, if Elon Musk would have his way, would be the statement there. But yeah, I definitely agree what you're saying, Sean. I don't really think I can add too much onto that. Just welcome to the preview show, Jake Smith, and I'm going to go to you, Jake. You had the chance to speak with Tom ahead of this fight. Where do you feel his head is at, and what did he say to you when you did speak to him? You're on mute, Jakey.
Sorry, yeah, I've been privy enough to be around Tom's camp when he's been in the Northeast. Look, Tom and his dad, Andy, have got an incredible relationship together. Yes, Tom's young in his MMA career, if you like, but the experience his dad's bringing in the mindset of Tom is way past the years he should have. Look, I know we were talking a little bit there before we started this, but Tom's making the adjustments he needs to make for any opponent he's got coming up. Curtis Blaydes, heavy wrestler, big guy, pretty uncomfortable when he gets on top of you. So what's Tom done? Taken himself away, not fully away from Cowborn, but moved away a little bit. Been out training in Holland with Rico, but when he's been in the Northeast, he's been training with KSW World Heavyweight Champion Phil DeFries. Now look, if you've seen Phil DeFries fight before, you know what Phil brings. It's relentless, wrestling, heavy pressure. Phil, out of camp, is more than happy to admit he enjoys his food. So Phil's probably 10, 15 kilo heavier than he'd like to be as well. That, pushing on you in the most awkward, horrible positions is the perfect training Tom Aspinall, I believe, needs for this fight. The interesting factor with it as well is, like I say, I've been privy to the ins and outs of his camp really when he's been up here. The gas tank of Tom Aspinall, the first time I saw him train, shocked me beyond belief. Just the work ethic of the man, but finishing 25 minutes of the most disgusting training I think I've ever witnessed, being fortunate enough to be around somebody's camp. Tom gets up, he's shadow boxing, he's moving about. He looks fresher than the freshmen that he's had in the cage with him. I think Tom and Andy have formulated this perfectly, heading into Saturday night. Phil's in his corner as well. Don't get us wrong. What Sean was saying is exactly right. This is a massive, massive step up again for him. I honestly believe Tom is more than capable of delivering a performance maybe people won't be expecting from him. Where I know, Sean, there you were saying that you think if Tom does get taken down, maybe it won't make a difference, the BJJ black belt he's got. But I honestly feel that Tom's adapting so quickly and evolving so quickly as a mixed martial artist, it's hard to judge him off his last performance. And I know it was only in March, but I was outstanding when I seen him train.
Yeah, it's the thing of what we've seen with a lot of fighters inside the UFC now is that, and I think Tom Aspinall fits into the bracket of a fighter who is, progressing up the ranks, developing as a fighter, adding new wrinkles to his game. And, we'll see the result each time he gets in there. Spencer, it's also a big fight for Curtis Blaydes here, and especially for his status at the top of the heavyweight division right now. Tom Aspinall can take all of his hard work away. I know he's on a couple of fights win streak right now. He's been in there with some of the best in the division. He's come close to getting a title shot. He's fallen at the final hurdle. To remain and to keep that status in the heavyweight division right now, it's just as big of a fight for Curtis Blaydes as it is here for Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, I would say it's probably actually bigger, because if he doesn't win this one, then he's really out of the line, right? Then he's out of even that small group at the top of the division. I spoke to him before this fight, and he said, look, if I win, you're not going to hear me call anybody out, because I think it's pretty clear that whoever wins this one fights the winner of Gane and Tuivasa, which is happening in Paris. And that sets up, to wait and see what happens with the three guys that nobody's active and healthy right now, or doing anything at the top of the division that we talk about. I love Curtis Blaydes' mindset about this sport, about this fight in particular. I do with Tom Aspinall as well. I think his approach to everything has been great. But Blaydes is one of these guys that, like, he doesn't, there's no noise for Curtis Blaydes. He doesn't listen to any of it. There's no anything else about it. Like, we started talking earlier this week, and I said, like, you're kind of in this weird spot. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I'm a prize fighter. Like, I'm showing up. I'm punching the clock. I'm punching that guy. I'm going home. I'm putting a roof over my daughter's head. I'm giving her opportunities that I never had growing up. And as long as I can keep doing that, everything else is fine. The belt is, yes, the ultimate goal from a competitor standpoint. But if I get there or not, as long as I'm competing and I'm making good money, I'm happy. He's done away with any of those pressures. And I think that makes both he and Tom going into this fight very, very dangerous human beings, because they're not thinking about it beyond Saturday. Like, we hear and we all talk to fighters and, I'm not looking past my opponent, but if I beat this guy, I'm going to call out that guy. No. These two dudes are focused on Saturday, and the rest of it happens after Saturday, legitimately. And I think that makes this, as you said, a very big fight for Curtis Blaydes. I think it is, as I said, bigger for him because of those couple of losses to Ngannou and the loss to Derek Lewis. But it's also a really great opportunity for him to again show that he's on a different level than Tom is right now. I don't think this necessarily, if Tom Aspinall loses this fight, it's not the end of Tom Aspinall. That's the really good thing for him. 28 years old, still lots of time, especially in this heavyweight division. Whereas Curtis Blaydes needs this one to sort of maintain his spot.
100%. And, after you said it and considering just especially what you said at the end there, is that, this isn't the kind of last hurrah for Tom Aspinall if he doesn't get it done here. Curtis Blaydes at 31, the way the UFC heavyweight division is shaping up right now, there's a big fucking lag at the top of that division. Lots of guys waiting for contendership. Is John Jones coming back? Is Ngannou coming back? There's nothing happening at the top. So maintaining your status in the top five, just outside the top five, is very important as well. Harry,
he's also screwed. Sorry to interrupt. Okay. He's also screwed by the two losses to Ngannou. And as Sean said, and as Tom said, actually, this week in prepping for this and talking about this, he's also the guy that nobody wants to fight, right? Like, nobody is rushing to fight this dude because he's a miserable matchup, and because he's got those losses to Ngannou. It feels like you don't get that far by beating him. And so it's just like he is now in that position of some of these guys we've seen where it's just, you've got to keep winning. You've got to beat every single person that they put in front of you and just keep going and hope you can get that opportunity again and maybe get a third fight with Ngannou, or somebody else takes over at the top of the division.
Age is on his side, though. Like you said, 31. 31 is young in that heavyweight division.
Yeah, 31's fine.
The only one thing I'll add, and I know Harry's going to jump in, he needs to keep winning, as Spencer just said there, because if he loses a few fights, he's probably on good money. The UFC happily get rid of someone like Curtis Blaydes when he's lost twice. But, like, he needs to bide his time, and seize the opportunity when it does become his time. Like, if Ngannou goes away to boxing, if he leaves, if John Jones is no longer around, or if he loses, he goes back down to 205, he needs to be there with wins for it to be his time. So that's why this fight is very important for him as well. I know he's won 2 in a row, so like he could go back, lose this and win 3 in a row afterwards and he'd be fine. But still in all, you don't want to be, you don't want those wins getting away from you. You don't want lads climbing over the top of you.
It's also very helpful that his hands have been developing nicely. He's not a guy that's going to stick around if he's just laying on top of dudes and grinding out clock. But he had that fight with Chris Diakiese in March, no takedown attempts at all. Put him out of there 17 seconds into the second round, only the second time that he's won a fight without a takedown. That's going to be a big factor. If he can keep slinging hands and putting guys out, he'll stick around long term.
Yeah, and since then, he's probably had some more time to work on that aspect of his game as well. And there's no better man, in my opinion, to talk about that aspect of his game other than Harry. How do you see this fight going, Harry?
I have big questions. I have big questions for both guys, really. Spencer just touched on one of my questions, and that's the Chris Daukaus fight. How many times have we seen wrestlers fall in love with boxing and forego their wrestling, and it turns to a detriment to them? This is, I don't put any stock into intangibles, or I try my best not to, but Curtis Blaydes is walking into an O2 arena that is going to be raucous with fans. What's his game plan and how does it develop in the fight? The big question from a technical perspective is obviously, does Tom Aspinall stop the takedown? I actually completely agree with Shawnee. If this hits the deck, the method of grappling, the application of grappling for Curtis Blaydes is not one that offers you, as a bottom defensive grappler, much opportunities to look for sweeps, to look for Kimura traps, to look for triangles. And I mean, triangles don't fucking exist in heavyweight MMA, let's be honest. But like, it's and he's going to go out and triangle him now. Watch, they'll be fucking furious. But like, it's such a difficult skill in order to create the space against a man who weighs 255 pounds that doesn't want to give you any space. Now, a jiu-jitsu black belt is a fantastic thing to have, but Shawnee and I have discussed this on multiple podcasts, on multiple speakers' corners, that the efficacy of jiu-jitsu from the bottom is dwindling. We're going to get onto Paddy Pimblett sooner rather than later, and we're going to talk about effectiveness of jiu-jitsu from the bottom. I think the question I have here is range. Tom Aspinall does some beautiful work very, very close in the pocket. You think of the Sergey Spivak performance, right? Just a beautiful in-pocket finish. Wonderful stuff. You think about the way that he closed the distance against Volkov. He's got very fast feet. He's got very fast hands. But the big question I have coming in here is, who's the better athlete, right? We talk often about when skills are often in the same wheelhouse, in the same realm. You're going to see that generally the better athlete, the stronger man, the more physical man is going to win these exchanges. I'm very, very interested to see whether Curtis Blaydes is the better athlete here. My bet is that he is the better athlete. And if he is the better athlete, I think it's going to be difficult for Tom Aspinall. But if I'm Curtis Blaydes, given the stuff that Shawnee's already talked about the uppercut and whatever, fucking taking every point that I've worked for, motherfucker. Like, the safest place to take Tom Aspinall down is against the fence. You crowd him, you catch inside trips, you catch reverse broomsticks, you try and shock him over your posts, you try to go to back body lock. You don't need to slam him because slamming gives space. You just take him down calmly, like a boa constrictor, and you work your way to that half guard pin and you start landing bombs. If you can push him against the fence enough, I don't expect the gas tank to be a problem for all of the reasons that Jakey's already said. And we've never seen the gas tank be a problem in the 2.5 minutes he's been in the cage or whatever crazy stat it is, right? But I just think the question for me is range, athleticism, speed, and power. Because if Tom Aspinall is taken down, how does he get up? Because it's not jiu-jitsu.
So someone said to me the other day, right? Curtis Blaydes is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, right? Imagine turning up to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. You're a heavyweight, a lad working in an office, weighing in at 235 pounds or something. You come down with your fucking blue belt that you've been working, 8 months, and you got your blue belt, great. And then fucking Curtis Blaydes is the guy you're going up against. Like, imagine that. And like, okay, that's, Tom Aspinall's not a fucking lad working in an office. But that is a big difference. One point as well, just before I throw it back, throw it over to you again, Ian. I actually think, Harry, you make a very interesting point about who's the best athlete. That is a massive point, and I'm actually not sure. I think Aspinall's a great athlete as well. I think we will find out, obviously, on Saturday night. One thing I would say, though, like, you know, we talked about O'Malley before, and obviously, you know, O'Malley's fighting Yan, and it's just the news, so it's, you know, in the head, and it's about his body kind of breaking down and stuff like that. And neither of those guys are like that, but the ability to take a massive punch off a heavyweight is something we've seen Curtis Blaydes not being able to do at times. Now, if I or you or any man living got hit by Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis, the way he got hit by him, they'd be knocked out too. But the fact is, he has been hit by him, he has been knocked out, and he carries that with him as well. So that's just one point. I think it could be, as Harry said there, the athleticism could win it, but that ability to take damage like that could be part of it as well.
If I could just round out with the thing that I think wins this fight for Tom Aspinall isn't necessarily the takedown defense. I just think it's variety to have Curtis Blaydes guessing as to when he's able to shoot the takedowns or is not able to shoot the takedowns. The athleticism question sits under that branch for me, because if Blaydes goes out, throws a couple of jabs and just fucking double leg train wrecks him straight into the cage, we got big problems. Because it means he can shoot whenever he wants and he can shoot from whatever distance he wants. Even if he doesn't hit the first takedown, he knows that he can get to the hips. And Curtis Blaydes is not a man you want to be comfortable getting to your hips, right? So I think for Tom Aspinall, footwork, angles, and finding his positions in the pocket and not leaving himself open to unnecessary clinch exchanges or unnecessary open cage wrestling exchanges is the way forward.
100%, yeah, very well said. And, you know, for me, there's a lot of questions over Tom Aspinall because we just simply, as Harry said, have not seen enough of him yet. But I really do feel that this is the fight where we're going to tick off a couple of boxes on Tom Aspinall. Is he ready? Is he capable to compete at the highest level at the heavyweight division? Those are all the questions that are going to be answered on Saturday night. It's actually a fight that I'm really looking forward to.
One last thing on that note.
Yeah.
Tom did an interview today with the UFC digital team. One of the questions was, because he had said going into the Volkov fight, I have questions about myself in this moment. How am I going to react in front of 20,000 screaming fans in my first main event and fighting this guy that's been in the top 10? They asked him, like, what were your answers to that? He's like, well, got answers, but a new fight brings new questions. And they said, okay, what are the questions here? And it was a bunch of the stuff that you were just starting to say. Like, he wants to know, how am I going to do against this guy that nobody wants to fight? How do I do against this guy that is the best wrestler in the division, that has been in the top 5 for 5 years? That fact that he thinks about it in those terms is so important to me and so critical to his future success that win or lose on Saturday night, I think this dude is like around for a long, long time at the very top of this division.
You get him on Speaker's Corner, will we?
Love it. Like, I mean, it's so important. Like, you have to have, I think, and I love hearing fighters say that because, okay, you can exude that confidence, but that confidence can bring a small bit of delusion into your mind as well. Whereas that when you know and you can question yourself and you know the abilities that you have and you still have those questions for yourself, it brings your ego down and brings you into a more realistic mindset, and you're going to see your true self in there. So I'm excited to see what happens in the main event on Saturday night. It's going to be a great one. We're going to scoot over the co-main event real quickly now. We're going to go to the people's main event, and that's Paddy Pimblett against Jordan Levitt. This is, in my opinion, the last hurrah for Paddy, where we're talking about very winnable fights for him. I think that this is a good matchup for Paddy in regards that we've seen him in there and we've seen him getting clipped before. Okay, hear me out. The knives are out early here, so they are.
I like that all 4 of us were like,
I think that Jordan Levitt has some good wins in the UFC. He's a guy that we know pretty well, and he has picked up some decent wins there. But I don't think he is a guy who's going to go in there and cause Paddy Pimblett too much problems on the feet. And I think that Paddy's skills in the grappling department are enough to equal the skills of what we've seen with Jordan Levitt so far. And I think that they're being setting him up for a first round knockout here, second round knockout. Whether that'll happen or not is another story. There have been talks of fucking twerking and teabagging going into this fight, Sean Sheehan. Are you expecting to see a twerk or a teabag after this fight?
I haven't heard any of that, to be honest. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Well, Jordan Levitt said that he's going to win and he's going to twerk on Paddy Pimblett, and Paddy Pimblett said he's going to win and he's going to teabag Jordan Levitt.
He's going to teabag him.
Yeah. So.
Jesus Christ.
Is this Halo 3? If anyone doesn't get that, I'll be really sad. Jake, you must get that, surely.
What did you say? You broke up, I think.
Halo 3 was a massive game when I was a kid, and when you kill people, you used to teabag them. But
oh no, I don't remember. Yeah, there's got to be. There's no fellow nerds in here, Harry. Sorry about that.
I know the game, but I never played it. But
I got Halo with when I bought, I think PlayStation 4 maybe, and I just never played it. But no, Xbox. It was an Xbox. I don't know. I've never played it. Rubbish in it. Anyway, it's a fight that I am very interested to see, to be honest, because speaking right the other day, look at Paddy Pimblett's record, right? And we'll all look here, and I'm sure Harry will do a breakdown. If I was doing a technical breakdown, we would say Paddy Pimblett's going to meet a good striker at some stage in the UFC, and he's going to get banged out, right? Paddy Pimblett, so forget about the Cameron Ells fight back in 2013. That's 10 years ago nearly. He's 2 losses, right? 2017, 2018. Nad Narimani and Satan Bak. 2 guys who are not great strikers by any means, especially Narimani. 2 guys who are heavy wrestlers and take you down and lay on top of you. Those are the 2 guys that have beaten Paddy Pimblett. Now, he's never really fought a great striker in all of that. So, that could work too. No, don't get me wrong. But the fact that we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, a wrestler like Levitt is maybe not the guy to beat him, maybe that's a little bit far off. Now, having said that, I do think Paddy Pimblett will win this. I don't think Levitt's necessarily a great wrestler. He's definitely not a great striker. So maybe it'll be a fight after this. If they do, let's say next time they have a fight and they give him a guy who's a very good wrestler and a rubbish striker, I think he could beat Paddy Pimblett. So I don't think it just needs a striker to beat Pimblett. Pimblett is a dangerous guy, though. He is massively hyped and everything like that, but he's a brilliant jiu-jitsu game, really good finishing game, and I'm sure Harry will say maybe his jiu-jitsu game isn't as good. I know we've talked about that before, but he's a great finishing jiu-jitsu game. He's dangerous, he goes for things, he puts himself in bad situations to get finishes, and that's great. He can also hit pretty hard. He isn't fucking Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao, but he can bang. He's Deontay Wilder more he can bang while not having maybe the best technique in the world, which is great. And I actually think his striking has come on leaps and bounds over the last 3 or 4 fights ever since he's got his his injuries and got back over them and stuff. Maybe Jake will tell us about the gyms he's been training. I know he went down to Leeds to train in one of those gyms, and he's been training. We saw in his vlog as well. He's been training in a boxing gym in Liverpool. So definitely has improved. His biggest issues are going to be going for stuff against wrestlers, which are submission game. That's not going to work. Like jiu-jitsu is not going to work at a certain level of mixed martial arts. You're just going to pull guard, get laid upon for 5 rounds. Sorry, Harry, and then lose decisions, or else his striking defense is going to get ate up against someone who can strike, and he's not going to be effective enough offensively to knock them out. That's going to happen with Paddy Pimblett at some stage if he keeps rising and if he doesn't keep improving enough. Not to say he won't improve. So maybe he will improve. Maybe it'll never happen. Let's see. Jordan Levitt, he's what Jordan Levitt, and I'm interested to hear what Harry says here on this because he's probably looked at more than me. What Jordan Levitt can do, right, is effectively stay on the outside with bad techniques and that are bad techniques that are not thrown well, but he just throws them to stay far away from you, and he win rounds by doing that because his opponents are actually kind of afraid to come in case he comes in and takes him down. I don't think he necessarily has the best takedown game. I don't necessarily think he's actually the best wrestler, but he just gets into positions like Paddy and he goes for it and he picks lads up and he fucking slams them, and he's very strong. He's one of these guys who doesn't look strong, but he's really, really, really strong. So if this gets to a clinch, let's say Paddy gets his back turned, Levitt goes down, picks him up, and fucking smashes him down. That could be a big problem for Paddy because Levitt is very good on top. Doesn't land that much, doesn't threaten too much with submissions or anything either. He's a very limited fighter, a very, very limited fighter. Paddy's a limited fighter in certain ways, but has way more in his locker than Levitt has. The problem is there are things in Levitt's locker that can beat Paddy Pimblett. There are more things in Paddy Pimblett's locker that can beat Levitt. But that means Paddy Pimblett just has a better chance of winning this fight. That doesn't mean he's definitely going to win it. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Like Paddy, I think the biggest thing for Paddy here is to break through that distance control that Levitt tries to do, to those kicks that come up through the middle. Just take a step to the right, bang in with a 1-2 right down the middle and hit him hard, and I think he'll have problems. I think Trey Ogden is actually a pretty good fighter. The guy who he beat and fought the last time didn't look it in that fight because he got caught on the outside and he couldn't move in because Levitt was keeping him there. Paddy Pimblett does that. It's going to be a shit fight. It's going to be a boring fight. It's, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think Paddy will do that. But that to me is a big key. Break that distance, land big strikes, don't get caught in the clinch, don't get caught with big takedowns, and you'll probably win the fight if you're Paddy Pimblett.
Harry, I'm going to go next to you to give us a breakdown of the fight, and I'll go to the two lads and get their opinion as well after you. But of the fear of someone else taking away some of your points as well, I'll give you the floor. I'll give you the floor to break down this fight for us.
So the first thing I'll say before I start the whole thing is there are two different types of grapplers, predominantly, right? There are methodical grapplers like a Curtis Blaydes, and there are intuitive grapplers like a DJ or, like a Piotr Jan at times, right? Levitt has a mixture of both. He's methodical in the way that he finds his takedowns. He's methodical in the way he works his cage wrestling. But when it gets to the ground, he is fluid and intuitive and is happy to go wherever the positions go. He just sticks to the principles of head and hip height. I agree with Shawnee that he's not a fantastic wrestler. His takedown game isn't sublime. But let's go back to the Claudio Puelles fight. Why do I pick that fight? Well, he's semi-limited on the feet, but he's a good grappler. He's got some knee bar finishes that definitely shouldn't fucking happen in MMA, but here we are. He's a guy that has an intuitive, slick, bottom jiu-jitsu game, right? Similar to Paddy. He's a submission hunter, similar to Paddy. What happened? Well, Claudio couldn't break the distance. He was just throwing some kicks back to throw kicks back at Levitt. Levitt shot from 65 miles out, lands a single leg, puts him on his back, and just grinds him out, essentially. Transfers positions with him, is happy to get swept because he knows he'll keep his hips and his head above the others. He's not going for massive subs, and he's patient. And this, I think the word patience might be the undoing of Paddy Pimblett here. Paddy Pimblett, we've seen big jumping triangles. He'll jump on a guillotine. He gets dropped essentially by maybe the slowest man in the UFC in Kazula Vargas, right? And when it gets there, what's he doing to get up? What's he doing? The answer is he's looking for half guard sweeps. Let me tell you, in MMA, half guard sweeps are tough. Now, his eventual get-up game was fine. He hip-heisted, got to his feet, whatever, hit the Uchimata, J-flow him, fucking J-flow him, mate, whatever, right? Hits him. But then the finishing sequence for Kazula Vargas sort of came from Vargas as well, right? Vargas had him in a head pinch, what's called a head pinch, where you trap an arm and somebody's head around the side of your head. They can't pull their arm out. They can't pull their head out for fear of being butterfly swept. Paddy did a good job of pummeling those butterfly hooks, but he then forgoed side control because Vargas was already turtling. Well, as he's already turtling, Paddy's like, yeah, sound. And the stuff that Shawnee podcasts talked about was perfect. His ability to find submissions in scrambles, his potency for finishing submissions when he gets hold of them is electric. By far the best part of his game. If he gets hold of a neck, or if he gets hold of a leg, or he gets hold of the back, his finishing potential is vast. But I think he makes and takes too many risks to get to these positions. You don't want to be in a position against somebody like Jordan Levitt, who's able to control the range, dive on takedowns as and when he wants to. His cage wrestling game is pretty good, to be honest. Reverse broomsticks, clearing the center of gravity, chucking you one side off, balancing you to the other, taking you down whenever he wants, landing in dominant positions. I absolutely empathize and echo with what Shawnee said about countering, though. To me, the big way for Paddy to win this fight is don't respect the naked kicks. Take them, either run him to the ground and you play on top, land some damage, he will get back up, he wrestles up from every position, Jordan Levitt that is, or just counter the kicks with straight shots. How many times have we seen in elite MMA and high-level MMA, a naked kick gets you knocked the fuck out? Because it's not landing with enough power and people can land their counter straights perfectly down the middle. One thing I would say for Paddy Pimblett is Jordan Levitt at the end of every first round fight that I watched looked fucking shattered at the end of it. Manages to get through to decisions, but if I'm Paddy Pimblett, I'm beating the fuck out of that dude's body early and often, whether that was with body kicks or with hooks or with straights. I'm beating the body for two reasons. One, to sap the gas tank. And if as I throw that body shot, Jordan Levitt changes levels, I already have down block hands available. I'm not overreaching up top. I'm not winging big shots that open my hips up. My hands are already available for down blocking. And I think if Paddy can do that and stop the takedown or ride the takedowns, reverse the takedowns with sweeps in transitions and land on top, fine. But I don't want to see any of the attempted get-up game that we saw against Kazula Vargas because it's not going to happen. The last thing I'll say about the get-up game for Paddy is he tried to use jiu-jitsu to get back up. And when he did get back up, Kazula Vargas had a tight waist and he had a wrist control. Jordan Levitt is not going to care about either of those things. He's going to immediately be running the pipe again. He's going to be immediately shucking into a back body lock. The strategic development of his game as the fight progresses, as the wrestling exchanges progresses, are far better than I think we've seen from somebody like Paddy. Shawnee mentioned earlier, and this is my final thing, Soren back, what did he do? Took him down, laid on him. What did Nad Narimani do? Took him down, laid on him. How did Paddy try and get up? Jiu-jitsu. Did it work? No, it didn't.
Okay, good assessment. If I have one last question for you, if you can answer real quick. If Jordan Levitt, Harry, is to get his hand raised in this fight, what does he need to do?
Wrestle. Just wrestle.
Do you think his best route to victory is to wrestle, make things awkward, and bring this to a decision?
100%. I don't think he finishes Paddy. I don't think he gets him out of there. I certainly don't think he finishes him on the feet. He finds a way to get to neck attacks and things like that. But Paddy is a pretty good black belt, to be honest. He is a pretty good black belt. Stevie Ray may tell you different on Polaris, but these things do happen in MMA. Like, his ability to know where he is from a submission defense perspective is pretty good. I can't see Levitt finishing him from the back or chokes or wherever it is. But I think if I'm Levitt, I employ the same game plan. I'm so confident with my kicking game because I know pricks aren't going to want to try and take me down. I'm so confident with my kicking game because I'm able to grapple. So if I'm Jordan Levitt, I do the same thing. I range find, I range find, I range find. I take him down and I smother him.
Levitt throws a lovely spinning back fist as well, or spinning back elbow. That's the one thing maybe he could finish him with, because if Paddy, if he's trying to break that range, if he's trying to get him, which he needs to do, he's wide open for that. And, we've seen Paddy in the strike room be wide open. That's the one place I think he could finish him, maybe.
I think patience is going to be a big thing for Paddy here, and he does not need to go in here and rush it, and doesn't need to get excited by the situation, because the fact of the matter is that Jordan Levitt is coming here after fighting a couple of times in the UFC Apex, and Jakey, you'll have experienced the atmosphere that is created by a Paddy Pimblett fight, by a Paddy Pimblett walkout. The lights will more than likely go out. Lethal Industry will come on the speakers. Paddy creates this buzz in the arena, and I've not experienced it in person, but I've talked to a few people just to say the word electric is the word that has been described as his walkout, and it's the Paddy Pimblett show. What is it like in an arena when he does make the walk, when he does go out there, and is that something that Jordan Levitt is going to have to get used to? And because it's a big contrast fighting in the UFC Apex into fighting into what Harry described it perfectly as a raucous crowd in the O2 Arena on Saturday night.
Well, look, this is exactly what it is. All three of you have mentioned about the patience that Paddy's going to have come Saturday night. When that Scouse house is bouncing, Paddy's making that walk, the crowd are going mental. There you go. Shorty's over here with that flag over the shoulders. But no, I think for both men, mentality-wise is going to be or where they are at mentally, is going to be so important for them. Jordan never come out today and was like, oh, how drunk can they be by 9 o'clock? Jordan either has no experience of UK drinkers or has never met a Scouser in his life. They're the only two scenarios I can think of for him to say that. The atmosphere in there, granted, it will be result dependent, all right? Meatball's on just before. If Molly gets a big win, Christ, the atmosphere is going to be even higher, right? Equally, though, Paddy has to keep his head. Paddy's walking out, and Paddy today on media day said, look, he didn't say he was rattled, but he said he was frustrated. He said he'd never had like a bad feeling towards somebody he was fighting, apart from Levitt, in just the way that he's went on the build-up to this. I'm really interested to see how that then plays out come fight night when Paddy's in there with him. If he does get overexcited, over-exuberant, if he's leaning into these shots, like it's been discussed previously, look, Levitt knows what Levitt needs to do to win it. He said today, to be honest, he goes, without the hype, I think it's a pretty boring fight, which I thought was a really interesting take from him. He was like, we'll probably grapple each other, probably cancel each other out, and then somebody will get the hand raised like by decision. The mentality side of things is going to be insane. Back on what you were saying there, though, about the crowd. And I guess back to what I was saying as well there. I think the Molly McCann effect may have something to do with how the crowd are sitting as well, you know, because look, whether people like it or not, Paddy and Molly are now very much a double act. That is now how they are. They've both got the Barstool deal. You never see one without the other. Yes, of course, the crowd will be going wild when the Scouse House starts. If Molly has won that, Paddy will be on the high. We've all seen the way he celebrated when she won in March. Like, his head went. And then, obviously, he managed to get back to it, got in there. A favourable opponent, got the job done. I'm interested, equally in Paddy, as I am in Jordan, with Levitt, and how he is going to react when the lights go down, when the music starts, when he actually sees just how popular Paddy is. Because he was like, oh, it's only 20,000. It is, but it's also 20,000, probably, 19,997 apart from the 3 men in your corner are wanting you to lose that fight. It's not just 20,000 then. It's going to feel like the world on his shoulders. And I think the mentality of both men is ultimately going to decide the winner of this fight.
Yeah, I think it's going to play a bit of a factor in the fight myself. And, you know, the statements like, how drunk can they be? Like, watch people throw booze at them. Watch people say, hey, we'll show you how drunk we can be at 9 o'clock. Some people might even...
Quite drunk.
Yeah, and some people will probably be drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning, never known at 9 o'clock in the evening over there. So, Spencer, I'm going to bring it to you. And there's one point for me, I'm looking at this as kind of the end of the honeymoon period for Paddy Pimblett inside the UFC. He has talked about moving over and fighting on pay-per-views. He's on a new contract right now. You know, tougher challenges are ahead. The fact that he blows up so much in between fights, and has to work so hard to get that weight down, takes away from so much of his training. This is a relatively short turnaround for him, and he's done the exact same thing. Is it 8-9 weeks in between his last fight? Do you think that that's going to play a little bit of an effect on his performance going in there on Saturday night? And do you think, are you in agreement with me that this is probably the end of the quote-unquote honeymoon period for Paddy Pimblett?
So before I get to that, I want to let Harry know that Paddy himself said this is his teabag reference is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, not Halo. But that's,
I'll take either one. Either one are acceptable.
That's just to let you know. He clarified that he specified that at his media day today. He made it clear you could do it in Modern Warfare 2. Going to do it to him on Saturday.
No problem. I'm with him. Let's go.
We're all for teabags here on the preview show.
I'm enjoying my tea now. I'm a fellow that enjoys, you know, me and Paddy have the same food tastes. I enjoy Popeyes. I enjoy a good McDonald's feed. You put me down in front of some fast food, I'm in. Problem is, I'm not a professional fighter that has to make weight. And the way that he goes through this is just like listen, you want to go out and have a celebration for a couple of weeks and take a couple of weeks off and eat your face. Like, just fill your boots, have at it. But then you got to stop and get back to real life. And then you got to stop and get back to, they're going to ask me to fight. And I know he had said that he wanted it to be a little further out. He was thinking September, October. And this is a bit quicker than he was expected. So I think this is a thing that, and look, he's looked great, and Jakey can probably verify that he's already there. Like he's in a good spot. Like I don't know if he's quite gonna step on the scale today and make weight, but he's not the round faced Paddy that we've seen post fight. But I do think it is a thing that he's going to have to address, and we've discussed it before. That he's made those statements, right? Oh, I'm going to be more professional now, and I'm going to take these steps, and I'm going to nutritionist, and he hasn't. And so I do wonder if this turnaround this quickly, if that kind of rears its head a little bit. But I do agree with you as well, Ian, that this is the end of sort of the honeymoon period. Like this is, I think every time they go to London, we'll see Paddy. I think he has a chance to, be on these cards going forward, and it will be and has been an annual thing every March over the last couple of years, excluded because of COVID. He'll be a fixture here, but I think he does want to be a part of these bigger shows. If that's the case, you're not fighting the Jordan Levitts of the world, and you also can't be fucking about and putting on whatever it is after these fights. You got to just get real professional about it, or else all of these things that you want and all the things we've talked about with Paddy every time we talk about him are going to start coming to pass, that you're going to get beat by somebody that maybe shouldn't beat you, or you're going to get stopped a lot sooner up that climb than a lot of people think. Like, I think there are a lot of folks in North America that think he is just superstar potential. And from a charisma standpoint and from a like magnetism standpoint, personality wise, off the charts, right? You put a camera in front of the guy. Like, my wife doesn't pay attention to anything to do with MMA, which, the fact that it's my livelihood for the last decade plus, great. But she's seen the Paddy clips after his fights where he's sitting there just powering back food and people are asking him about it. And he's like, I'd rather be fat and happy than skinny and in shape all the time. And like, she loves it, but he's got to knock that shit off, because the rest of these dudes that are going to be coming to take his place and take his fame, they're coming quick. And this is, if he gets through this one, it needs to stop after this fight.
Indeed, it does, and it will be interesting to see what happens in that fight with Jordan Levitt. That one gets us nicely warmed up for the co-main event, and I'm going to go back to you again, Spencer. I'm going to try to catch you on the hop here as you're drinking. Jack Hermanson versus Chris Curtis, and the real story here coming into this co-main event is Chris Curtis stepping in at short notice again. At the start of November 2021, Curtis had not fought any fights inside the UFC. Less than a year, he's going in there and he has a chance to get into the rankings in the middleweight division. It's just been a great story for him so far, and he's going in there against a tough opponent in Jack the Joker Hermanson.
Yeah, fifth fight in a 12-month period. If you go back to his Kenny Robertson fight, his last fight outside of the UFC at the start of, or 12 months ago. I mean, it's just insane, right? He's at the right place at the right time. He lives and trains in Las Vegas. Deron Wynn doesn't make weight. Phil Hawes makes weight, is ready to fight. And Chris just happens to be there. I think Sean Strickland was on the card. He was going to be cornering Sean. And Chris says, well, I'm good to go, and rips his shirt off and gets on the scale and makes weight. Like, he's on weight. He's ready to go. And the UFC says, Phil Hawes declines the fights, is not fighting this dude on 24 hours notice. Fully understandable. But the UFC says, okay, great. We'll just make it 3 weeks from now in Madison Square Garden. And Chris Curtis walks out and knocks this dude out. And then 3 weeks later, he walks in and knocks out Brendan and stops Brendan Allen. And even just that alone is a tremendous accomplishment, right? To go from 0 to those 2 wins in a 2-month stretch is great. And then a couple months ago, he has that fight against Rodrigo Vieira, where, not the most entertaining fight. Harry and I talked about it on our show, The Next Day Takeaways. A very sound, technical, tactical fight from Chris Curtis. Kind of keeps him moving forward. And here he is again, right? Darren Till, as soon as the news broke that Darren Till was out, Chris Curtis is there with his hand up like, sorry, London, I know you wanted to see Darren, but I'll come and fight this dude. Like, there is no stopping this dude in terms of his willingness, his readiness. And at 34, 35, whatever he is, he's 30 fights into his career. He's got all the polish. He's got all the experience. He is a nightmare in these situations. Because if you're the Joker, you've been preparing for Darren Till, you know what he brings to the table. And now you're fighting a guy that's got a totally different skill set, plus all the confidence in the world. It's been an amazing story. And like, win or lose, he's already succeeded. This is all house money going forward for Chris Curtis. But I actually think he could probably hit a couple more jackpots. So it's going to be fun.
It definitely is going to be fun, and it'll be a great fight. I'm going to scoot ahead if anybody else doesn't have anything else to say about that fight. I'm going to talk.
Just one thing on that. I think that's very much a meeting of a fast starter against a guy who'll work his way into a fight. And I think if Hermanson will go for it, he always goes early, and he could get the finish. I think he probably will get the finish, to be honest, if I'm honest. But if he doesn't, Chris Curtis is the type of guy who'll win rounds 2 and 3 probably there and probably win a decision against him. That's a massive fight for Jack Hermanson to keep his place in the division, and he's going to need to get it done early, I think.
100%. Harry, talk to me.
Sorry, just a funny little tidbit as well from today's media day with Manson. He was asked about, of course, the photo of Chimaev and Manson training together, and they'd asked sort of how that come about. And Jack was just sort of like, I have no idea. I was just opening the gym and he was there. He was like, I don't know whether he knew Till was injured and just fancied some rounds, or he came in, seen his training, said Till, maybe sit this one out. But it's just so really funny, like a really human moment from Hermanson just to be sitting back like, I have no idea why he was there, but he came in, we trained, it was sound.
Nice. Harry, I'm going to move to you just to talk, not even necessarily from an analytical point of view, but more so a general assessment of Nikita Krylov versus Alexander Gustafsson. Gustafsson flirting with MMA right now. He's out, he's in, he's retiring, he's not retiring. He's jumping up to heavyweight. Now he's back down at light heavyweight. What are your takeaways from his recent activity, and where do you think that Alexander Gustafsson is at in his career right now?
Who knows is the honest answer. I don't think he knows, and I think that's the reason why we're seeing the sort of behavior that we're seeing. If you're going to go to heavyweight, fine. Commit to it, do the work, and go to heavyweight. No problem. Don't cut weight no more. Eat what you want to eat. Turn into Paddy Pimblett, whatever. No problems. I think the matchup, if we were looking at Alexander Gustafsson that knocked out Glover Teixeira in the Globe Arena in Stockholm, I was there for that one. It was great. 222 Liam. I don't understand. What does that mean? Is this a limerick reference? Oh, I understand. Okay.
Oh, we'll have to kick him out with the stream there now.
I gotta go soon anyway, don't worry.
If it's Gustafsson that knocked out Glover Teixeira, I think this Krylov matchup is a pretty simple one, to be honest. Gustafsson's a motherfucker to take down, an even harder motherfucker to hold down, and that long rangy frame with the uppercuts and the head movement was great, always has been. But Gustafsson hasn't looked like Gustafsson in a long, long time. Is that because he's a father now? Is that because the John Jones fights just took so much mentally and physically away from him? Is it because, I know, Spencer, I'm getting there. Is it because, is it because he's been almost at the absolute precipice of his powers and it just wasn't enough? Like, what does that do to you sort of morally and philosophically to be able to get to the point where people are saying, fuck me, that was the closest fight John Jones has ever had in his life, but it wasn't enough. But that was the best we'd ever seen, Gustafsson. So in this Krylov matchup...
Then to find out after that fight that John Jones was on the bag and then he started kind of...
Sure, look.
I'm only joking. No, I'm only joking. I'm only
kidding yourself. You know what I mean? But I think now, just thinking about this fight, it's a great matchup for the UFC. Because if Gustafsson goes in and beats Krylov, well, Krylov's a good European name, and they can put Gustafsson in the main event of some European fight night show against some guy, whoever they want, right? Like Ankalaev if he goes up, or whatever. Like, we could see that, right? However, if he loses, well, Krylov goes in and he takes what's left of Gustafsson's name, because the highlight reels are going to be of John Jones. It's going to be of him knocking out Glover Teixeira. It's going to be of this. It's, the media package will allow Krylov to build from this. But it's a shame, really, because to see Gustafsson fall from the height that he's fallen from is a shame.
Yeah, it's the point that you made about how he is mentally, and the losses to Jones, the loss to Daniel Cormier, running them close as well. The loss in his home country of Sweden to Anthony Johnson. Those are very, very tough mental hurdles to get back, get yourself over, and to kind of get your mentality right and get your confidence back up again. Then you go out there and you lose relatively easy to Fabricio Verdum when you move to heavyweight. But if you're coming in here and if you're getting beaten by Nikita Krylov, you need to be taking a big look into the mirror, and you need to be having a huge conversation with yourself and whether it's right for you to be competing anymore. And that's it. Not even in the UFC altogether, like, because he should be going in there, even at this stage of his career, and at least being competitive and winning and beating Nikita Krylov. And it'll be interesting to see if that can happen. Does anybody have any tidbits on that fight? Spencer, go ahead.
Spencer, I have one as well after you.
No, go ahead, Shawnee. You're the one that's got a heart out here.
Just a quick thing. I'm okay, actually. 9 years since the John Jones first fight. 9 years.
Crazy.
9 years is a full MMA career. It's 15 years since he made his MMA debut. His debut was closer to the John Jones fight than we are now. That's madness. There, you know, I haven't actually looked it up since myself and Harry were talking about it earlier. Is it Occam's razor? Is that thing? If you're looking for the most, I haven't Googled it. If you're looking for the most obvious answer, the most obvious answer is that he's been fighting for 15 years and he is no longer the fighter he was in his prime. Because MMA, you have a few years up, you have a few years in your prime, and you have a few years down. Is that 5-5-5? Maybe. And if it is, this is the end.
Spencer.
So the thing Harry said about how do those fights just impact you mentally and just physically and emotionally. I can tell you from speaking to Alexander Gustafsson this morning that motherfucker still does not want to talk about that Anthony Smith loss. And if you bring it up, he's like, it was 3 years ago, let it go. And it's like, all right, but you took off your gloves and said, I'm fucking out of here. He was like, yeah, I was angry. I was like, dope. But that was your reaction, was I gotta go. Like, I'm done. And then you fought Verdum and you looked completely uninterested. And now you're back after 2 years. You said all the right things today. This is all I care about. I'm focused again, had some stuff going on, whatever. I just think, you know, you made the joke about then you find out John Jones is not taking it seriously in that first fight. Tell me how much that doesn't fuck with your head. You go out and fight this dude to, you know, the toughest fight he's had, and he comes out afterwards and says, I didn't train for it. And you wait all this time. You have that fight with Daniel Cormier in Houston. I was there. It was close. It was a hell of a fight. DC himself, that's one of the toughest fights I've been in. And he still doesn't get it. And then he finally gets the John Jones fight, and Jones blows him out.
That's what happens when Jones does train for you.
Yeah, blows him out. So you've had this stretch where you were right there and everybody thought you're number 2, number 3 in the division. And it turns out, you know, you were a distant third at best. That messes with you. And when you start doing the, like, I got to go, I'm going to do some other stuff, and you got health issues and you've got other things going on, like, he should, as Harry said, if this is best version of Alex Gustafsson, he runs through Nikita Krylov. But I mean, there's no way to forecast what version of this dude is on Saturday night until we see it.
Indeed, and we shall see on Saturday night. Next on the agenda is Molly McCann versus Hannah Goldie in the flyweight division. And I think this is a pretty well matched fight for Molly McCann, being honest. I know Hannah Goldie can kind of provide some problems on the grappling department. I think this is a fight Hannah Goldie is probably going to want to take down. Molly McCann, Jakey, in the last UFC London card was all the talk. Her spinning elbow knockout was absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be hard to top that coming in here on Saturday night.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But like, I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago at the Four Nations, and she said, look, a couple of days after, it doesn't matter. She was like, is it probably the best day of my life? Of course. But if I get starched in my next 3 fights, it doesn't matter because I'm out of the UFC. Like, there's been a mindset change, I feel, with Moll, let's say in the last 10 months, where I feel like, not necessarily like as an athlete or as a person she's matured, but she's got to grips with this celebrity, if you like. Look, she's always been like that in Liverpool. She'll be walking down the street. It'll be, oh, Molly, photo. She's like that in the UK now, though. I guarantee you there's nowhere she can go in the UK where she won't get recognised. And that's got to take a bit of adjusting to. I think it was with that interview with BT Sport, and she said, look, it did take a bit of adjustment to get used to the fact that now, like, I'm almost like public property. I'm there for the people. But now she has adapted to it. I think she's really taken on that role. And honestly, just speaking to a lot of the women athletes growing up and stuff now, especially at the Four Nations, Molly was there for 3 days coaching. 2 weeks out from a fight, she spent 3 whole days just coaching, cornering. That takes a lot out of you. Then she was generous enough to give us some time at the end of all that. But for Molly, that's where now I think her head's at. She knows where she's at. She knows the responsibility. Don't get me wrong. She knows how big of a moment that was in March. But she's not still living on that now. I think she's so much more toned into what the game is, what she has to do. She knows she has to go in there and get the job done. I know this week as well, she said, look, like, people have doubted us about getting a title shot. She was like, I wouldn't be in the sport if I didn't want that. How far away people think that is, it's obviously entirely up to them. It's subjective. But Molly's in a headspace now where I'd argue probably the best headspace I've seen her in her professional career, in terms of, this is my goal, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing. And even using our profile for the community, the Weapons Down, Gloves Up project, her, Tony Bellew are part of in Liverpool. If people aren't aware of it, I'd definitely go and look at it. But the fact she's now using her status to help benefit our community, I think is massive. But the fact that her head's still screwed on now, and she knows she's got the goal in sight and exactly what she needs to do, speaks volumes about her.
It sure does. And, she spoke about some of those mental battles. And I do agree with you, Jakey. I think that, she seems to have overcome most of her mental issues and belief issues, because she spoke on the overlap with Gary Neville about the high of winning the Cage Warriors World Championship in the Echo Arena, then joining the UFC, losing on her debut. So she went from the highest of highs to the lowest and lows. And sometimes that's a little bit hard to bounce back from as well. And you cannot be having those issues when you're inside the UFC, because you're going to get found out super quickly. Look, she's been matched up with pretty favorable matchups, pretty winnable matchups lately, and it'll be interesting to see where she can go in the division. A very likable character, like you said, very generous with her time, always willing to help out. I know Shauna Bannon was on speaking with me, and Shauna Bannon has been doing a lot of work with her in the build up to this fight, and she's been helping out Shauna a lot as well. So, it's great to see. And I was very happy to see her get her moment in the last UFC London card with the fantastic knockout, one of the knockout of the year contenders, I'd have to say. And it'll be interesting to see how she does against Hannah Goldie in that fight in the flyweight division. Anybody have any additions to add to this fight? Harry Powell, go ahead.
So Hannah Goldie is trained at the gym that I grapple at this week. She's been down hitting pads with her coaches, just getting herself ready for the fight. I think the thing that's been outstanding to me is the size of Hannah Goldie. That lady is humongous. She is as wide as you would expect her to be from when you see her in the cage, you see her on photos, whatever. I think physicality is a really interesting thing here. We talked at the top about who's a better athlete, who can be more physical, who can be more, dominant in those attrition stages. I've never seen Molly in real life, but Hannah Goldie's a fucking unit. So, if Hannah Goldie's objective is to grapple and is to look to push Molly against the fence and get her to the floor and keep her there, she certainly looks like she's got the physicality for it.
So this is the first time in a long time I know Molly's going to have the reach advantage over somebody as well, and she's made no joke of made no qualms about that it'll be quite nice to have that, to be able to stick and move. From what you've seen, do you think, just looking at the stature of Hannah, I know you said you've not seen Molly, but do you think the stature of Hannah will be able to almost like bum rush at and get the takedowns in, and height-wise as well, Hannah? Just what are we talking sort of difference? Because I know Molly's certainly not made out like it's a massive difference, but she seems very happy to have the reach advantage for once.
Yeah, Hannah Goldie's not a tall lady by any stretch of the imagination, but watching her move on the pads, watching her move her feet, like, she's slick, she moves well. Can she close that distance and can she push it against the fence? I don't know. Molly, as we've seen, she tends to fall into dirty boxing exchanges. She tends to try to win wars of attrition. She tries to move in the inside or whatever. It will be interesting to see whether she develops her game plan to capitalize on the reach advantage. If not, I mean, I imagine if she's going to try and close the distance and ends up in the sorts of performances that we've seen Molly in over her career, the physicality will probably play a big part.
Yeah, that is, and making sure that she's not hanging about in the pocket too much where Hannah Goldie can grab a hold of her and take her down, because there ain't no fucking reach advantage if your back is on the mat. And that's what Molly McCann is definitely going to have to avoid if she's going to get
all the same height lying down as a wise man.
Hey, I've had enough sexual innuendo on this preview show. I chose not to go down that direction this time around. But
then I guess we won't ask Harry what the kids would call Hannah Goldie.
No, move on.
I thought you were going to enlighten us there. Sean, talk to me about Paul Craig's fight with Volkan Ozdemir. This is yet again another tough test for Paul Craig, who you would think after his last win would have maybe been rewarded with a higher up level of competition in the light heavyweight rankings. But Volkan Ozdemir is a tough motherfucker. He hits hard and Paul Craig gets hit, and that's not good news.
Yeah, true. But Volkan Ozdemir has lost 5 of his last 7 fights. He's lost 2 in a row, one of whom was Muhammad Ankalaev, who Paul Craig has beaten. Why can't Paul Craig ever get any fucking respect here? Like, it's ridiculous. Okay, he's the first fight in the main card. Maybe he's getting a bit of it. He never, ever gets any respect. It feels like all of Paul Craig's wins are just put down to luck. Oh, he luckily caught him in a submission. I
hate jiu-jitsu. I've said it.
They do. And I'm the savior of jiu-jitsu. I've said that many times as well. But like, jiu-jitsu as plan A is no good unless you can fucking succeed with that plan A. And Paul Craig has proven over the last fucking 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been that he can succeed with that plan. And now, having said that, he might go in here and get knocked out, but that's MMA. But he deserves more respect for that. He deserved a fight in Glasgow. He deserved a headlining spot. He deserves someone who's on a win streak here, because he is, and he's a very, very good fighter. I've given him as one of my bets this week purely out of that respect, because I think he deserves that respect. He's just not gotten enough of it, I don't think. And could this be a fight, right? You said, will Ozdemir knock him out? He probably will, yeah, let's be honest. But imagine if he just knocks him out and he doesn't knock him out, and then he comes down on top of him. Well, then he's getting fucking submitted. I'll tell you that for free right here and right now. He better knock him out. He better fucking knock him out, because if he doesn't, he's probably getting submitted. And like Paul Craig, I think his striking has improved a little bit. We saw it in a recent fight. We saw it in the fight after. He was kind of getting better on the place again. But he is the type of guy who will pull guard. He's the type of guy who will catch an arm and pull it there. He will get taken down on purpose. You know, we see guys doing that. And he can play, like we talked about Aspinall earlier on and him not being able to win a fight from the bottom. Paul Craig will win the fight from the bottom. He will find a way, and he will come through being destroyed to find a way as well. Volkan Ozdemir is a guy who's been, finished a few times. He's been submitted a few times. He's been finished by the third best light heavyweight of his era as well, Daniel Cormier. But I think Craig can do it. I think Craig can do it. Gustafsson won that fight against Cormier. Cormier said it himself on a podcast a few weeks ago, and Paul Craig's going to win.
I couldn't agree with more. I think that he definitely deserves more respect. Yeah, you'll have the naysayers out there saying, oh, he was losing the fight. But you know what? He ended up fucking winning a lot of his fights that he was losing. And that's the most important thing. Tell me you were not entertained when he locks in that triangle choke after getting the face bet off him for the duration of the fight. I was up in arms in my living room watching that last fight against Krylov. It was unbelievable. Like, I mean, this sport is about entertainment, and that is fucking entertainment. That's a comeback. That's what we want to see. Everybody loves a good comeback. And I truly hope that Paul Craig can go in there and get it done. I do worry for him in this fight. He is going in there with a guy that has pretty big power in his hands, but he's some man to take a shot. The power of the beard, the power of the Scottish men is unreal to see, and I'm excited to see if Paul Craig can pull it off again. Also, very happy to see him on the main card of this fight, and he deserves it too. Harry, please round us off.
The one thing I'll say is I'll disagree that it was a comeback against Krylov. He was asked afterwards, like, that was a mad old fight, and he was like, no, that's kind of what I planned. He basically said that he didn't really respect the power of Krylov, so he was going to allow Krylov to smash him in the face a few times.
He took a hell of a beating, though, to be fair. I mean, comeback in regards is that if he hadn't locked in that triangle and the fight had stayed going the way it was going, he was losing all 3 rounds.
I couldn't agree more. But like, to go back to what Shawnee's saying, that's the belief he has in his own skill set, right? He has built a game plan where he allows lads to smash him in the fucking face a bit for them to feel like they're ahead of steam. And then he's like, here's this triangle. Watch. Mental. Absolutely fucking mental. I'm not saying it's the smartest game plan. I'm not saying it's a game plan for longevity. I'm not saying it's a game plan that will make his wife love him anymore, but I can fucking tell you, it works.
If Paul Craig triangles his way to UFC light heavyweight title, Sean Sheen will retire, because that is the definite epitome of Brazilian jiu-jitsu working at the top level of the sport.
I've said it recently that Brazilian jiu-jitsu is on the way back.
You're over and back. You're over and back. You're playing.
I'm pretty set on what I've been saying for the last year. Jiu-jitsu is back. I've been saying it. Harry, I haven't in fairness now. Come on.
All right.
It's nice to see. It's nice to see as well with Paul that his head's totally back in the game. Look, if you look back just before that fight in March, he said, get November, probably retire, see what happens. Sort of, he was done. When I spoke to him the other week, he was so honest. He was like, I just spat my toes out of the pram. He was like, I beat Hill. I was meant to fight Gustafsson. That fell through. I didn't get offered anything else. I was pig sick. I've been a company man through the whole thing. Like, he got to a point, Christ. It was, you've started somebody on Dana White Contender Series. Here's Paul Craig. That was how his career ended up for a while. And I think he got sick after that Gustafsson fight got pulled. That was going to be huge for him. And he said it himself, look, threw my toys out of the pram. I was pretty upset with the whole situation. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. But talking to him now, his head seems switched right back into this. Look at the top of the division. Glover's up there. Look at the age of him, look at the age of me. I'm here to stay and I'm here to make a statement. Only loss, of course, Ankalev is Paul Craig, albeit by some miracle, but it's still a loss. And I mean, everything's set up nicely. Even the Anthony Smith fight.
100%, even the Anthony Smith fight. I think the most important movement in this fight will be Volkan Ozdemir going like that whenever Paul Craig falls down onto his back and asking him to stand back up. You ain't going to don't follow Paul Craig down to the mat. You're going to get triangle. It's as simple as that. Right, moving quickly along. We have a bunch of other fights to talk about. Harry, I'm going to go to you. Late addition to this card, but a great fight. Ludwig Klein versus Mason Jones. The Welsh Dragon is on the card, and I'm delighted to see him on it as well.
I don't know how this fight goes. I really don't. Ludwig Klein comes in and looks insane against Shane Young. Unbelievable power, unbelievable accuracy. Took a couple of losses, been finished by Leighton Andoir in the third round of that fight. Mason Jones has been fed to the wolves a little bit, right? I had a big rant the other day to Spencer about Mason Jones and his resume of Cage Warriors, the level of competition that he faced in Cage Warriors, and to come in at 25 years old and to be fed to the fighters he's been fed to doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Ludwig Klein seems like it's a matchup that is one that is more in the wheelhouse. You know, they've done here's a European fighter, taken a couple of losses. Where are you in your sort of trajectory? Where are you in your sort of career? But the question I have for Mason Jones is twofold. One, can we see the judo? Can we see that judo black belt come out? Can we see the clinch exchanges? Can we see the grappling? Can we see Mason Jones take a smarter route to a win here? Because he falls into the trap of getting lulled into absolute dogfight wars. And that is not a place you want to be with Ludwig Klein. So I think, again, in the same vein as Gustafsson Krylov, this is a great matchup for the UFC. Because if Klein turns around and gets a highlight reel knockout, well, we've got 4 fights, 2-2, 2 absolute insane highlight reels, and 2 losses against, guys in the UFC. If Mason Jones turns around and gets the win or a finish or something useful, then again, they've got that guy who they've kind of put through the ringer a little bit, but now, he's on a steadier streak in the UFC and they can build him. To me, the big technical question is range. I know I say this all the time. I sound like a fucking broken record, but it's cadence and range, right? Ludovic Klein, when he gets ahead of steam, has a beautiful kicking game, some fantastic striking game, some variety to his shots, some variety to his picking of shots. I think Mason Jones needs to add variety and different cadences to his rhythms to allow him to break that down and not allow Klein to get ahead of steam. You don't want to be on the back foot in a war with Ludovic Klein walking you down, but we will see.
Indeed, you do not. Moving swiftly along, Spencer, Marc Diakiese went in there and bewildered DC with his wrestling in his last fight with Vladislav Borshev's Slava Claus. Seemingly the only man that was surprised by the wrestling of Diakiese, even though he's shown it off time and time again inside the cage. How do you see this fight with Damir Hazovic shaping up? Sorry.
DC clearly needs to watch the Severe MMA preview show because we had that one pegged from the
Pay
jump.
us, DC. Pay us our money. Don't be paying that other joker that doesn't give you the information that you need behind your desk.
We hook you up, DC. Just come here and follow the lads.
You're probably not going to get anything though, Sean, to be fair.
I don't want his fucking money. Keep it.
I mean, this is another one of those tough fights for Marc Diakiese where it's, if he's on and focused and doing the best version of Marc Diakiese, I think he can certainly win. I think we do see the wrestling again. I think the best path to victory is to just put Damir Hazovic on the ground and kind of beat him up there as best you can. But does Marc Diakiese slide back into wanting to be the guy that's throwing, Tekken combinations that just light up Timu Pakalin? Because if it's that guy and you're standing across from Damir Hazovic, who never in his life has seen a fist fight that he was like, nah, I don't want to be a part of that, then it gets to be trouble. I think Marc has turned a corner. I think he has sorted some stuff out. I think that performance against Slava Claus, as you said, was a very mature, a very smart performance of a guy that understood what he needed to do and his best path to victory. I think it carries over here, but we're going to have to see on Saturday, because if he goes out there and wants to strike, then it starts getting a little dicey.
Yeah. I think the path to victory for Diakiese here is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Get your second.
A bit too, though.
He does, but he's under pressure. He was under pressure as a guy who had a losing streak going into his last fight, and I'm not sure if he's as forthcoming of taking a few risks in this fight, where it could be you lose 4 in a row, you win 1, and then you lose again. I'm wondering if he comes in here, picks up another win, then I would be kind of curious to see, and him taking a few more chances in the next fight after that.
I don't think that happens either. So I have a really good relationship with his grappling coach, and his grappling coach also has sort of a good impact in the game planning side of his camps. He's well aware that at the moment, winning is the most important thing, and sticking to a game plan is the most important thing. Now, I'm going to say this, and he's going to go out and he's going to immediately throw a wheel kick, and we're all going to shake our heads. But from the insides of his camp, the conversation is, we're going to build a game plan and you're going to fucking stick to it. And so far, he's agreed, and we saw it in the Slava Claus fight, that he did exactly that, right? So I think we've got an interesting matchup here, and this is a matchup that Diakiese can absolutely win.
100%. 145-pound division, Nathaniel Wood is making his debut against Charlie Rosa, and this is a fucking belter of a fight. An absolutely terrific fight, and I can't wait to see. A huge Nathaniel Wood fan that I am. I've been following him for a long time. Charlie Rosa is no joke, though, Jakey, coming into this fight, and it's a tough test for Wood's first assignment in the featherweight division.
Jake hates it by the look of him. He doesn't like it at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you're bang on, Sean. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, look, first time up at 145 for Wood. I just wonder, like, I mean, today he was saying, "Oh, I don't think I'd make 135 again because I filled out so much." But I don't think looking at him, I mean, of course, muscle mass, whatever. But looking at him, I really, really didn't see that. I'm not a fan of this matchup at all for Wood at 145 for his first fight in there, certainly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he does at the weight, what his energy is like.
Did he miss weight or something at 135? Why is he gone up?
Spoke about this in the interview I had with him. He
Yeah.
basically said making 135 was just too much pain. He got to a point where he said that he has a condition where after a certain time his body just refuses to sweat. So what he's having to do is diet from an extremely long way out and then force his body to make the weight. Like the picture that went viral of him super vascular with all the veins, he was like 141, I think, in that photo. And he was like getting to 136 almost killed me. So he's like, why do I bother? You know, he's training with guys that are up at the weight classes and he's saying, I'm doing just fine in my sparring rounds. Why not go up? I can make 145 easy. I can eat a bit better. I can put more weight on and I could do this a lot easier. That's the reason he went up.
Yeah,
Prince Andrew would never make an MMA fighter. Will he?
he never. Brilliant. I mean, with Wood, I'm looking at here, and yes, he's jumping up, but he hasn't competed since 2020 against Casey Kenny. He has had that time to put on the weight. He's going to have more time to not have to cut the weight when he's preparing, and it's not going to take away from his performance when he gets inside the cage. And that's why I'm excited to see him in there and see what he can do. But it is a tough test against Charles Rosa in the 145-pound division. Moving swiftly along,
it's going to be fight at night. That's my prediction. That's going to be a fucking banger. Charles Rosa is very good jiu-jitsu, but he also will kind of roll with you and make it exciting. He'll also strike with you. I think that's going to be a fucking bang. I think Nathaniel Wood will probably finish him, honestly, but if it goes a little bit longer, I think it's going to be fight at night, because Charles Rosa, I love watching Charles Rosa fights. Every time he tweets, or every time he fights, I tweeted, love watching Charles Rosa fight. Being a big fan of Nathaniel Wood for a while, I think that's going to be a great fight.
It definitely will. Moving on to Amir Carney versus Jonathan Pierce. Two great fellas, two lovely fellas. We don't have time to talk about this fight right now. We're going to move on to Muhammad Mokaev versus Charles Johnson in the 125-pound division. A lot of talk about Muhammad Mokaev. Made a fantastic UFC debut. He's your fighter to watch this week, Spencer. Tell us about this fight.
I mean, he's the best prospect in the sport right now. Like if you look at it in totality, right? He's 21, never lost a fight in his career. Yes, it's only 6 wins as a pro, but he 22 or 23 as an amateur. You don't make your debut in the UFC under that scrutiny at home, not quite home, but on home soil in London with all that pressure on you, and then go out and beat a dude in 58 seconds. Like, it just, when you're 21, it just doesn't happen, right? It's rare because these things aren't supposed to happen in MMA, where you just turn up and smash this dude with a perfectly timed knee, and then grab a choke while he's trying to slam you to the ground and get out of there in less than a minute. Like, that to me was the, okay, this is 100% for real. Now, there's all kinds of years between now and the finished product, and things can certainly, say it all the time, development isn't linear. Anything can happen going forward. But what we've seen of him so far, competed internationally in wrestling, pretty solid boxing, seems to have a good head on his shoulders and a good focus about things, dealt with the pressure the last time out, gets a bump up the fight card this time around. There's just, for me right now, there's no reason to question or doubt this kid. There's certainly questions to be answered going forward. And literally every fight is going to be the next toughest test of his career. And Charles Johnson, and maybe his UFC debut, dude's no joke. He's 11-2, LFA champ, defended it twice. His only losses are to Shorty Rock and Brandon Royval, who is in the top 5 at flyweight. So, like, this is a for real test. But what we've seen from Mokaev so far is that he's ready for these kinds of tests. Now, whether he passes or not, we'll find out on Saturday. But, like, the sky is the limit for this kid. And if he can keep everything locked in the way that it's going, I love the fact that he got that win and was like, cool, I'm going to ATT to train now. Going to be in a room with all kinds of people that have done this before, all kinds of coaches that have guided people to the top before, because I want to get there and this is what I need. I think he can probably get there. It's just going to be a question of when.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, Harry. And, you know, we only got to see a glimpse of him of his UFC debut, but even in that short glimpse, he showed so many great things: patience, sharpness, the ability to hurt his opponent, and the killer instinct as well. And this was under a minute that we seen him. How long do you expect to see him in there this Saturday night?
As long as he wants, I think. I think in these early goings, in these early fights, it's going to be, how do I want to win this? You know, for Mokaev, he's one of the guys, you know, what's the thing we talk about with Saeed and Umar Nurmagomedov and Khabib back in the day, right? It's they could be more expansive on the feet. They can be more open. They can be more fluid and languid and offer more, because good luck taking that motherfucker down. Good luck. And if you get him down, good fucking luck holding him. So for Mokaev, I think in this fight, I would actually ask, if I was his coaches, go out and give me 2 rounds and then let's see what happens. Shawnee Podcast makes a brilliant point on a speaker's corner that may be out. I can't remember the scheduling, but we talk about skills versus experience, right? And one of the things that Mokaev could really use here, I know he's got a plethora of amateur experience. I know he's got a plethora of pro experience, but there's no experience under the big lights in front of an O2, in front of 20,000 like this one, right? Go out, give us 2 rounds, fight dominantly, you know, take the Khabib approach, win the fight, then do the smashing, then just do whatever you want, right? You want to throw the fucking flying knees or the this or the that, have at it, but go out and just feel that cage for 10 minutes. Feel that cage, feel the atmosphere, feel your opponent, win the fight, then go have fun.
We talked time and time again, and I know you guys have talked on Speaker's Corner and the likes about decision-making in fights, fight IQ in fights. I spoke to Ger Harris this week on the Owl Triangle, Sean, who had the chance to actually go and get some work in with Mohamed Mokaev, and he actually mentioned in the interview about his decision-making, about making the correct calls, making the correct movements, and not wasting any energy. You know, obviously he's had an extensive amateur career, over 20 fights, and that's translated into his professional career so far. But hearing those things and hearing other people say those things really gives great promise to Mohamed Mokaev that he is doing those exact things as a young fighter so early into his professional career, because it can only get better.
100%. Like if you look at Mokaev, he's 8 fights as a pro, obviously the one no contest in there as well, and he's what was it, 20 22 amateur fights, something like that. So he's, you know, 30-ish fights. We you know, Harry mentioned experience there. It's a lot of experience for someone with 1 fight in the UFC, you know, and with not a great amount of fights outside of it. Now he fought some, you know, Blaine O'Driscoll is a UFC level fight that he had before he got to the UFC. Fought Glynn McVeigh, which is a very good opening fight. Okay, he's a few weird ones in there as well, but haven't, you know, still in all, he has some great experience. The thing about Mokaev, right? Sometimes, right, you see a guy like that and they are so destructive and so dominant at the level they've been fighting at, whether it was his amateur career or even in his career to get to the UFC, and now in the UFC, 58 seconds, you know, very dominant. The answers to the questions you asked there about the decision-making will only be really found out when he gets tested. Now, from everything we've seen so far, my opinion would be that he'll pass those tests and that he will come through them and that he is a great fighter. But as we saw with Jack Shore the other day, you don't know until you know. You don't know, you know, maybe there'll be some people talking shit about you, putting pressure on you, or you put pressure on yourself, and then you go in there and you perform like Jack Shore did. Mohamed Mokaev seems like the type of guy who will perform well all the time. He will take anything that comes to him and he will keep winning. But we will only know when he gets there. For me, I agree with what Spencer said there. You know, after Jack Shore, it was a massive prospect. He's still a massive prospect. I'm not writing him off after 1 win. but you'd have to put Makhachev above him now as the best prospect in the UK, definitely at the moment anyway. And maybe he'll be the one who brings a title back to Manchester United, because we're certainly not winning any.
Jesus Christ, yeah, that'd be wishful thinking. Jakey, you've had a close look, obviously, with your work with the IMAF talent coming up. You've had a close look through the years at Muhammad Makhachev. I'm sure that you're thinking along the same lines as the rest of us, and how supremely talented he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's not a massive amount sort of to add that's not already been said, but the body of work Makhachev put in those amateur days, I think it was a 5-year amateur career, which it doesn't maybe sound like much, but when you see how often he's fighting, to get 23 fights in the space of 5 years, and especially on that IMAF format where it's day after day after day after day you're fighting, especially when you're collecting any fucking gold medal in the competition that you go to, the way Makhachev was, you end up literally fighting for a week at a time. It's easy, I guess, for fans, or well, not fans, maybe even casuals, to look and go, oh well, look, like this person was only 3-0, this person was only this when he was whatever. Irrespective of that, the IMAF scene is there for the best fighters of your country to fight the best of the best elsewhere. Look, we see this all the time. Do you know what I mean? We look at the Russians now in the way that they're wrestling, phenomenal. Like every country has its own little niche or its own little twist on techniques. The whole IMAF platform is there to see that, and to see Makhachev dominate time and time and time again on the junior scene throughout, and then obviously the senior Oceanic at the very, very end of his amateur career before then turning pro. He went to Brave. He continued. You look at Brave now. You look at the amount of IMAF alumni on Brave. These young prospects again coming up through. It was quite funny. Charles was on a Twitter space before, and he was talking about it. He was like, "Oh well, what's better in terms of level of standard, LFA or Brave?" And it's an interesting. I thought it was an interesting thing that he brought up, because when I'm coming from LFA, and like I believe obviously the standard over there completely outweighs anything Makhachev's faced. I think it's different timings though. Makhachev, I believe, is the first of many, many IMAF alumni we're going to see coming up through this Brave circuit and absolutely bursting onto the UFC scene.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that materializes. We're going to round off this show real quickly with the Black Country Banger, the best striker to come out of Wolverhampton since Steve Bull, as Sean Sheen excellently described him. That's Jai Herbert, who comes in and to take on Kyle Nelson in the lightweight division. Look, we've spoken on this show time and time again about how tough Jai has had it in his entry into the UFC. Coming in against Trinaldo, tough fight. Another tough one against McCann. Good win against Camerworthy. And then a tough short notice fight in his last fight with Ilia Topuria. A fight that he was doing so well in until he got caught. He's coming in here against Kyle Nelson. And you know what? There can be no arguments about his level of competition here. This is as fair and as an even as matchup as you can get in the lightweight division. I'm delighted that Jai, even though he hasn't had the best tenure in the UFC, was rewarded with a new contract. But now the pressure is on to perform. He cannot afford another loss. This is a big one, Shawnee, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a good fight. It's as you said, well matched. Talking to Jai the other day, like he said he was giving compliments of Kyle Nelson. He's like, he's a good fighter. And I was like, oh, you might win in this area. And he was like, yeah, maybe. Yeah, he's pretty good there as well. Like, Nelson is a very good clinch. He's very good. I've got a Muay Thai clinch as well. You know, he throws those knees inside and he's strong there. But Jai loves to land elbows and stuff coming off it as well. Look, we know what Jai needs to do here. He needs to stay away from those big power shots in the clinch. He needs to stay away from the cage. He needs to not get taken down and use his striking. And I said it to him about circling, and Jai doesn't say much, you know, but he is very good at what he does. And if he can keep circling, and if he can keep using his hands, if he can use his lint, he should beat Kyle Nelson. And I think he'll get him out of there in the first round if he can do that. He almost had Topuria out of there in the first round. He knocked him down hard. And, you know, if Herb Dean was reffing, well, it probably would have gone to the fourth round, even though there's 3. But, you know, it's one of those fights that could have been stopped if there was someone else in there. He hits hard. He's really, really good. And Jai is the type of guy, I've said this with fighters before, and it's funny, Joe McColgan is one of the guys who Jai's actually fought before. Something will turn or I hope it will anyway. Something will turn in Jai Herbert's head or in his preparations, and he will become the fighter I think we all believe he can be, because he is so skilled and he's good. You know, he's a good athlete for the division. He's long. You know, I really like what Jai Herbert does, and he's a guy I've really liked for a long, long time. And I think the matchmaking has been atrocious, obviously. And he, you know, I asked him about that, and he said, look, I got made against and I fought the fights and I went out and I lost, and that's that, which is a great attitude to have. You know, maybe his management shouldn't have had that attitude, but that's the fact of the matter. Hopefully, you would say, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, and hopefully that will be the experience that shows him the level he needs to get to, and will show him where he needs to go in his career going forward. But does he have the skill set? Does he have the ability? Yes. If he turns that corner, if he gets a bit of confidence back with a few wins, I think can go a long way. It's a tricky fight, but I think he can win it.
It is a tricky fight, and Kyle Nelson is in a similar enough position as well as Jai Herbert, having only
exact same record in the UFC.
Exact same record, having lost his first two fights, picking up a win and a loss against Billy Quarantillo in his last fight too. Anybody else would like to share any of their opinions on this fight, or should we wrap it up? I think we've done an excellent job covering the card.
Just a super quick one for me, just because I'm so interested in the mindset and psychology of fighters. I'm really interested with Jai. Look, he's returned to the scene of the crime. It wasn't that long ago when he got laid out in that arena. Making that walk, for me, I'd like to see it be more towards the end of the year. I think this is a quick turnaround after suffering such a horrendous knockout. And for it to be going straight back to the same arena where it happened. Will it play on his mind? We can only wait and see on Saturday.
Yeah, very, very excellent point. Spencer, I'm going to go to you. Pick your fight of the night for me, please.
Oh, man. So I'm going to preface this by saying that it depends on which version of Makwan Amarkhani we get, because if we get a good version, I think that can be a real scrambly, real fun fight between he and Jonathan Pierce. But if we get the bad version, then he's tired in 4 minutes and Jonathan Pierce just grinds on him for the rest of the fight and it gets really boring. But if not that one, I mean, you guys singled out Nathaniel Wood and Charles Rosa. I don't see how that isn't up there towards the top of the list, just knowing who Charles Rosa is and that Nathaniel Wood's got a little something to prove this weekend.
Yeah, indeed. Harry, I asked you last week, we're going to try and keep it up every week. You do your severe spotlight every Monday. Who do you feel will be on your severe spotlight article this Monday?
I want to be controversial and say Jordan Levitt, but I won't. I'll
love it.
Probably Mohamed Mokaev. It's probably
indeed. Shawnee, I guess you gave us your opinion on the fight of the night. That was the same as probably what I think as well. Wood and Rosa is just going to be a banger. Jakey, any fights that you think might, apart from that, might be fight of the night?
I think the main event's a hell of a one to watch. How it's going to play out. Will Blaydes get Tom to the floor? Will Tom manage to negate any sort of damage on the floor? Will those elbows Blaydes so well known for play a factor? I think it's in for a hell of a fight.
Great. And we're in for a hell of an event too. And everybody can scoot over as well to the Severe MMA YouTube channel, because we'll be doing a live watch along from the very first fight to the very last fight. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster. There'll be excitement. There'll be loud screams. There'll be could be a few arguments. There could be a few disagreements. There could be a couple of special guests along the way that might throw up a few spanners in the works. Only way that you will find out who will be there. We'll all be there. So other people will be there. You can find out who else is going to be there if you tune in at 5 o'clock. It will be, I'm not even going to go through all the time zones. Me and time zones, it's like too many. Join us 5 o'clock, whatever time, 5 o'clock Dublin time, 5 o'clock London time, whatever time in the world it is at that time. Check your phones, check your watches. We'll be there at the start of the card, Severe MMA YouTube channel, to do the live watch along for this card. That was your preview for UFC London. Before you go, I want you to remind you, we're not sponsored by the Limerick Lady, as Sean was saying, by eatallreal.com. Head on over there, enter the code word Severe MMA. grab yourself some delicious protein bars. This ad was not sponsored by Limerick. Do you know what this? Do you know what this is? Do you know what this show is brought to you by? It was brought to you by JP McManus and the sports doping that is going on in Limerick hurling right now. You cannot be having it. We'll see you all on Saturday night. Goodbye.